Babe Ruth played from 1914 to 1935. He is now third all-time for home runs with 714 and has the highest all-time slugging percentage at 690 and OPS at 1.164. He is generally known as the best player to have ever lived.
Ty Cobb played from 1905 to 1928. He has the highest all-time batting average of .367 and the second for hits all-time at 4,190. Even with steroids, some of these records could not be beaten. It seems clear that these are some of the best players ever.
There is one thing that taints the impressiveness of these records and their careers, however. When the league was created, all races besides blacks could participate. This came to an end with Jackie Robinson in October of 1945, leaving 78 years of organized baseball without African Americans. As a result of this, becoming a professional baseball player was not even a dream for black children before 1920, leaving 53 years of baseball being nearly irrelevant in black communities. Despite this, the integration of the league elevated the competition level significantly.
So, the two legends previously discussed never faced a black pitcher in a major league game. Would they have been successful if they had faced this increased competition level? Would their records even exist? Most of these records have only been eclipsed by users of performance-enhancing drugs, although most of those records have asterisks next to them as they were achieved with a lower competition level. So it essentially took performance-enhancing drugs to lower the competition level to what it was without the presence of African Americans.
It is impossible to accurately compare the players of the integrated league versus the segregated league, as there was such a large disparity in the level of play between the times. Letting one record represent these two basically separate leagues is illogical and devalues what African Americans brought to the game.
So, this begs the question, should records achieved before the integration of organized baseball still hold full validity today?
We believe the case should be made for an asterisk to be placed on records achieved before the integration of baseball, denoting that they played in a segregated MLB. It took a long time for African Americans to get into the league and be accepted. By saying that the league's competition level did not rise with the addition of these players is basically not acknowledging their existence in the league.
Some may make the argument that these players of the Negro League were not in the MLB in the first place simply because they were not good enough yet. This was most definitely not the case.
Many base such an argument on how, at the time, no Negro player had competed at the major league level. On the contrary, many of the major league teams held interleague exhibitions. In the data presented, it shows the head-to-head records between the Negro League teams and the major league teams, who had varying number of actual major leaguers. As one can see, the data given shows that Negro League players could compete, and most of the time they were significantly better than these major league teams.
The fact that the competition level was elevated by integration is indisputable as well. This graph represents the percentage of all-star teams' positions occupied by African American players versus the percentage of the league composed of African American players all over time. Notice that more of the all-star teams were made up of blacks than the league itself, showing that African Americans were not only holding their own, but excelling actually, and therefore pushing their competition.
This next graph shows the win shares percentage of African Americans, how much black players accounted for each win, versus the percentage of African Americans in the league. See that they did more than hold their own weight as win shares exceed the population content. Once again, it is evident that these athletes were thriving in the MLB.
Once again, the only other similar case of this stark difference in competition would come with the use of steroids. Athletes who utilize performance-enhancing drugs are typically excluded from talks about the greatest ever, and not one has been inducted into the Hall of Fame yet. Their records, of course, have been deemed illegitimate as well.
We are not making the case that athletes that played before the integration of the league should not be allowed in the Hall of Fame, as it was not their choice to live when they did and play in the segregated league, as this is not a comparative achievement. The recognition of the difference in the competition level should come with their records, as this is a comparative accolade in which the conditions were not consistent in the case of the players of the segregated era, just like in the case of the steroid users in that era.
Unlike the steroid movement, the integration of Major League Baseball elicited large-scale reform. This came in both written and unwritten legislation.
The social reform that came with the integration of Major League Baseball created progress in the effort to not only integrate blacks in sports, but also create a better societal perspective in general. Jackie Robinson had a much greater impact than just changing the game of baseball, but his signing to a major league team called for change throughout America because now the issue at hand had to be faced and dealt with.
Overall, this cause relates to the ideas of self-determination. Letting records made before the integration of the league stand is the same as devaluating the increased competition that African Americans brought with them into the league. A movement to have these records treated just as the records made by players using steroids by placing an asterisk on them directly coincides with the ideas of self-determination. It would allow for what African Americans contributed to the league to be fully recognized just as the self-determination movement would have lobbied for.
So now, we invite you to form your own opinion on this idea.
Thank you for listening.